Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is D.H. Thorne with my buddy Waylon here from the Black Tower, the Sorcerer Aramana Sul. And tonight we wanted to do a special live stream. We always try to do at least one a week. And right now, the topic of this video is something that comes up a lot in our practices and lives on social media, doesn't it, Waylon?
Man, does it.
I think we're going to be disappointing some people tonight because I think a lot of people are expecting some kind of expose on the various, leaders of the community that we know and all this kind of stuff, and a lot of mudslinging and all that because of the way I titled this video was a little clickbaity, I guess, would be a little fair to say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a little fair, but we're not here to point fingers and shake sticks and throw stones. Just to point out some abnormalities, I guess you could call it.
I mean, I think they're actually very normal. I think that we're dealing with a very normal thing. I just think that, we're talking about a community of people that are here to discuss higher things, and work on higher things. And I find it, we'll get into it in a minute, but I really think that this is going to be a little bit funny for some people. I think we're going to see a lot of people like tuning in and out of this expecting one thing or another. So let's hope that happens. So yeah, we want to apologize first of all that this was clickbaity, and we want to make sure that people understand, we're not calling anybody out. We don't think anybody is to blame. We don't think that there's any one person or even a group of people to blame. And the timing of this video is kind of interesting because Waylon and I had talked about this the other day, and we hinted at it for a few days. And then apparently there's like stuff going on right now between members of the community that is, causing people concern. And, I mean, it's a social networking community. You're going to have people that get along, people that don't. But what I think that the important thing we're trying to get across in this video is that there's a lot of manufactured outrage and drama that goes on, and every few weeks it's between different people, and it keeps going, and some people are getting smart and they're staying out of it, and some people are staying in it. And like I said, we're not trying to judge anybody. We're never going to name names here. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to actually stand up and say, like, this is what you can do differently. This is how I think we can proceed. We're not trying to be arrogant about it or smug. We really just want to extend our hand to people and say, we don't like this. We think that people should be allowed to disagree, of course, but just because you disagree with someone, doesn't mean you need to have a witch war and start hexing each other and all this other nonsense that goes on. What do you think? Well, do you think that actually happens, or am I overreacting to this?
Oh, you're not overreacting. It's kind of interesting. Somebody can post something online, and you have somebody come down below and call them out on something, and and then that's cool. That's fine. But then when you have like 30 or 40 posts or comments, it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. My only thought is this right here: are you trying to show the audience just where you're at, or are you trying to make a point because your point gets lost in the back and forth? You want stuff like that? I believe that should seriously go into the realm of private messaging. If you have that big problem with somebody, just take that to private messaging. There's enough drama going on in this world. Don't need much more. It reminds me a lot of what religions do in general when they don't have a certain evil or some big thing to band together and get behind and attack, that they start infighting one another in all the different branches, so forth and so on. And I'm not saying that we're like the religious. What I am saying is that don't be like the religious. You got a problem with somebody, talk to them, work it out, however, throw up the middle finger, whatever you're going to do. Social post media and stuff like that. Seriously, no matter how intelligent or wise you are, you're showing quite the opposite, just going on and on.
We're already getting some interesting comments that I just want to bring up real quick. We have Smiley Place saying it's because of Mercury in retrograde. I like to say, what's the famous saying? Mercury in Gatorade. I mean, people, like, you can say all this, but I mean, this has been going on since before that. I mean, we've been noticing this for a long time. It's the maturity level of the people that are involved, and It's always different people. So like I said, I'm not trying to shame anybody at all. It's just, what happens is you have people who, like, I'm 42 and it's taken me this long to rise above it a little bit and try not to engage in it. Like, I have people contacting me sometimes several times in a day, you know, when this stuff heats up, trying to get like, oh, don't work with this person anymore because they're this, that, and 6 other things. And don't trust this person. Don't trust, motherfucker, don't trust me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is not, you know, this is not like, what are you talking about? This is Facebook. This is ridiculous. This is stupid. And yeah, as Peter Nielsen asked, what's the different definition of a witch war? Is it the same thing as Facebook shaming? Yes, it is a little bit of shaming and slander. It's a lot of slander. And yes, people do throw curses and hexes around, which I think is absurd. It almost never works because honestly, if people calling you names on Facebook is cause for you to throw a baneful magical attack at somebody, chances are your spirits aren't impressed with your, you know, with your intentions. And they're more likely going to give you shadow work and problems and obstacles instead to grow your maturity level, because it's just a stupid thing to argue about and to get, you know, not just argue about it. It's a stupid thing to waste your magical energy on. You could be sitting there, as I put it, I created the meme that went around a little while ago that was of the demon sitting in the chair saying, you know, you have contact with these dark forces and yet you light candles in the dark and call upon the forces of darkness to smite your enemies because they hurt your feelings on Facebook. You have these spirits that will help you ascend higher than the throne of heaven, and this is what you're using it for. I find that laughable. And I think a lot of people, we'll get into more of the details in a minute, but I think a lot of people, you know, are misusing that energy. They're wasting their time. And, you know, people do have legitimate grievances though, right? I mean, you'd agree. There's some people that do have legitimate, like somebody was a fraud or someone exposed like some private information and they have a right to speak out. I mean, that does happen too, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's one thing if there are 30 or 40 people saying that every time that they've gone to this person, and I'm not talking about somebody who has like 5 accounts, you know, because we've seen that on YouTube. We're not talking about it's the same person on multiple accounts doing it, but when there's constant, you know, feedback about how this person took their money and never got back with them, you know, and all this other stuff, you know, that's one thing. You know, that's you know, calling somebody out. That's allowing that's allowing the community to know, hey, this person is approached with caution, you know. But going back to the dude's question there concerning casting spells towards each other, let me go into that a little bit better. You may not necessarily have that. I mean, you will, but what honestly is happening is in the community, you got everybody trying to do what they do, like they did in high school, create niches. Oh. They're little cliques, you know, trying to divide. And, oh, I've got all these people behind me, and oh, we're this and oh, we're that. And it reminds me of a power struggle, power hungry struggle, where it's like, you know, yeah, I've got all these people, and it's like, what's going to happen is that when that situation dies down, they're going to have to find something new to get started into, and then they're going to try and get those people behind them because nothing screams, oh, I'm important, than to have, you know, I don't know, 50 people behind you agreeing with you. You know, it's like you get on there and you post a meme and all of a sudden you got 50 likes. Okay, who cares about that if the point of putting a meme up there was to point out an fallacy or to make a point, you know, that's great. But if what you're doing is to see, oh, well, how many people are going to like or dislike this, you know, what's going to happen is your message is going to be lost in the sound.
Yep. It's a lot of sound and fury denoting nothing. Yeah. I mean, I noticed like this actually extends a little bit to, like you mentioned, like when you have memes, like people put memes up and, you know, sometimes I look at them and I go, well, this is why in Dark Sorcery we have a limited meme policy, which means we allow them, but we try not to make it all about memes because we consider Dark Sorcery a learning and teaching group, not an entertainment group. And we allow entertainment because that makes it, you know, inspiring to people. But it's really just about the clicks and the likes. And a lot of these people are trying to build their, like you said, their niche, or they're trying to build their clique. And what happens is, you know, just like this video, I think we have a little bit of an elevated audience, or at least we had some attention. I got, you know, a lot of attention today, like personally from it, because of the clickbaity title. And this has a lot to do with it. When you have people who are trying to assert themselves, you know, nothing, you know, it's kind of like I hate to bring up American politics right now, but it's a lot like what, you know, Trump versus the mainstream media is like. There's a lot of infighting going on because it builds an audience. You get a lot of people worked up and pissed off at the media and at Trump and at the opposition and everything else. So everybody's glued to it. And so you'll have these feuds that happen every so often. Sometimes I wouldn't even be surprised if they're fake, but I think for the most part, that's just my tinfoil hat talking. I think a lot of times, you know, people do this and they don't even realize, maybe subconsciously, this is a toxic tendency of an immature person to get attention by having. Now, again, I don't want to dismiss, because there's people I know, some people that message me today, they have legitimate grievances with one another. I am not trying to diminish any of that. I want to be very diplomatic here and let you understand that a lot of what we're talking about is not in response to what anything happened today or yesterday or 3 months ago. It's just the trend. This is literally like synchronicity in action. We were planning to do a video like this, at least I was, for a little while, and yesterday or the day before, I was like, you know, it'd be good, let's do this. And Wayne was like, yep, and like, here we are.
Yeah, because it's a trend. I swear, it's just, you know, one person does it, another person does it, another person does it. You know, saying I like to say, we all drink from the same well. And
oh yeah,
it is. You know, even if you don't look at it from that point of view, imagine there is a cup, and it you know, and it never empties. And, you know, this cup has to be passed around and shared between everybody. Well, imagine this. Every time they're speaking, every time somebody's speaking shit or just going on and on, or just, you know, whatever, you know, causing this division, this clash, you know, no, nobody's going to like everybody all the time. Nobody's going to like half the people half the time. You know, it doesn't matter about all that. But the thing is that, you know, that poison, imagine that you feel or you are consumed with this shit, and you drink out of this cup and you pass it over to somebody that you call your brother, your sister. You know what you just done? It's just like the cold or the flu, man. You just passed that shit around. And you know, it gets so annoying to understand that, you know, we're supposed to be enlightened, but yet we act like, you know, we just started out like we're, you know, like we're the high school weekend Satanists or something, you know, that it's just edgy or cool or something we should do.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you bring up, that's a very important thing, is the poisoning the well. I liken it to crabs in a bucket. And anybody who, you know, I'm from Long Island, New York, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest fisherman on earth, but we, you know, we like our fish, we like our seafood. And when you go crabbing, you know, you'll put them in a bucket, and you don't even have to put a lid on the bucket, because they're so busy pulling each other down, trying to get out, climbing on top of one another and pulling each other down, that they don't go anywhere. And all social media groups are filled with a combination of these crabs and sycophants who are trying to ride people to the top. And so what'll happen is you'll have somebody who's one of these crabs, and they see somebody who's successful, or they see somebody they don't agree with, and instead of like, I'm just going to do my thing better than you do and get my attention that way, I'm going to speak out against this person, and that will start pulling that person down. And now maybe they'll act defensively, right? Maybe they'll retaliate. You know, some people that we're talking about, all they're really guilty of is retaliating to attacks, and they're not really bad people. They're good people. They're just retaliating to attacks. They don't know that they're giving energy to their enemies. This is baneful magic 101, and they're retaliating to their enemies in a way that makes them look weak. But their sycophantile hangers on are clinging to them and saying, no, go fight them, go fight them. Yeah, we support you. We're your friend. Go get them. And you get an army in arms against people. This is why, you know, I mean, I personally have a policy where I don't like to speak ill publicly about anybody. If someone wants to know my private opinions, sometimes I'll share it, but usually not. I prefer people to understand that, I think Waylon's 100% in agreement with me on this. I would much rather support even a fraud, all right? Just hear me out. Don't judge right away. I would rather support even a fraud than cause division in the community just to make myself look good. So I'd rather support people and give them a chance to grow and to get better at what they do, and let the community decide by seeing what they do and see how they act, than say, you guys shouldn't listen to this person because I think they're a fraud and I think that they're lying and they stole money and blah. Yes, like you said, if they're obviously guilty of like a crime or something, or of defrauding people or something like that, that's a dividing line. You know, like I said to people, if you're a murderer or a child molester, I'm going to expose you. You know, that's a different story. But if you're just somebody who's got issues and you've got drama with people, I don't care. That's not my problem. I will never make that anybody else's issue. You know, I'm confidential in that way. I don't think that anybody should have to feel that way. I mean, you have people posting each other's private conversations from months ago. They'll save up things just to expose them. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why is this even happening? Like, cut it out. It's like so childish.
Yeah, that's funny. That whole point about, you know, messages and stuff like that, and people saving those messages and doing this.
We had a joke about that between us the other day. I'm like, you could get me with things that I've said in private. We could get each other. It's funny.
It is. Well, here's what I find funny about it. What kind of person do you have to be to save messages? Because you're like, one day I may need this to get at this person. I mean, who the hell does that? I understand cunningness. I really do. And, you know, and part of the walking the serpent path, you learn this. You just do. But there is a whole nother thing about doing stuff like that. Stuff like that is like premeditated murder.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, I'm going to hold on to everything because of blah, blah, blah. And, you know, coming back to, you know, like even conversations you and I have had, you know, there's that whole privacy thing. And I'm not talking about what's going on in media.
And context.
Yeah, and context, exactly. You know, because it's a lot different when you're typing something out than when you're sitting here like on a video or you're like video chatting. You know,
like, you know, he's so damn stupid. I hate him, but he's like my good friend. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so when you go and you post a message like that, first off, you know the reaction it's going to get.
Yep.
Second off, you know, you're aiming to inflame a group of people who I guess all they have the time to do in a day is to read a bajillion posts. Or
right,
you know,
they'll read a headline.
I personally don't get that. I may live a fairly boring life, but fuck, man, I've got way better things to do than worry about what this person said, that person said. You know, it reminds me of school all over, and I'm like, you know, there was a saying when I was a kid, and they used to use this concerning old people. They'd say, once the man, twice the child. Because, you know, when you're born, you're a little kid, and, you know, and you got your own little hang-ups and stuff, and then when you get like an old age, you become like a child all over again. Well, in what stage are you supposed to get to that point at such a young age? Like you're past the child and you're way before that. You know, just, I don't know. It's fucking childish. It's petty. And, you know, and I use the language I do concerning it because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Some people could argue it and be like, you know, tell me straight up, you know, yeah, but this and but that. And I'm like, are you even listening to yourself? Why are you so attached to an opinion, to a thought, to any of that? The idea behind anything that you do is to grow from your experiences and things, but you can't grow from it if you're still clinging to it. And then when you're clinging to it, like we've talked over and over again about you know, the giving away your power and all this, that, and the other, you become burnt out. No wonder these people need 50 other people to agree with them and, you know, help. Oh, we're going to attack this person. We're going to make sure that you're blacklisted and blah, blah, blah. Had they done something equally ferocious or just downright fucking wrong, you know, that would make perfect fucking sense. Hell, even in the old day, tribes would rid themselves of what they called sick. You know, and I'm not talking about those who were too weak to take care of themselves. No, I'm talking about like pedophiles, you know, sick shit.
Yeah.
You know, remove that. They would take care of that on their own.
A lot of that headhunting stuff in the Aboriginal tribes and everything, it had a lot to do with that. That was a way to, you know, destroy the evil, so to speak. And it wasn't like they liked doing it. You know, they would do it. They'd take the person out, and the person who did it often had to be family. You know, in a lot of these cultures, the person who would do this purging, I guess you'd call it, would have to be family, because it was, you know, it was unhealthy because you could start wars. You know, if you had one tribe go after the sick people in the other tribe, you start, so the family has to deal with it. And this is kind of like what I think is, you know, on the one hand, like, again, I want to make sure I stress that there's a lot of the times what happens is you get one jerk or one asshole or whatever, and they start the problem. and then people retaliate or they feel defensive. And I've been there, you know, like I haven't always been like who I am. There's time, and who knows, maybe someday I'll piss off the right person and I'll get an army coming after me. But a lot of the times, you know, what happens is the person will get something said about them or a video made about them or whatever, and the person attacking them is obviously low-hanging fruit. You know, there's certain people in the community this happens with a lot, and they'll have low-hanging fruit will attack them because they are elevated, they are on top, and so the crab tries to pull them down, and they'll get, you know, whatever, and then they give this person attention by saying, go mock this person, go make fun of this person, whatever. And sometimes it's okay. You know, some people do it with class and it's okay. Sometimes it doesn't hurt them, and it will not hurt them because they're witty and they're clever. But sometimes it shows a weakness instead. And this is when you start getting this whirlwind of just drama and stupidity. Some people thrive on it. So, I mean, again, you know, I'm one of these people, like, I don't like to judge people even for this. I don't want to judge somebody for it, but I do want to say that what we try to do and what we encourage people to do is to not be these crabs in a bucket, and don't be a sycophant that, you know, like a fanboy or a fangirl where your favorite occultist can't ever be wrong and can't be corrected and so on. And I mean, I have an ego that's bigger than this screen. You know, I mean, I'm a Luciferian in that sense that I'm prideful, but I hope that I'm never so prideful that if someone says, you know, DH, you misspelled this word, I don't go, I meant to spell it wrong. You know, I don't ever want to get that crazy. So I'd like to make sure. What's that?
Sure you did.
I did. I really did. I always do. I do everything wrong on purpose.
Now you're still on my line, man. That's oh yeah, I knew that. I was just testing.
I was just testing you. I wanted to make sure you knew. But I mean, social media isn't real, guys. You know, social media is, you know, this is something that I've realized recently is, you know, not recently, I've always known it, but I've decided to put it into action on my more personal accounts. Is social media like Facebook is a lie. It's a way to rob you of your personal life in a lot of ways, because I don't know about the younger generations, but people my generation and older, or maybe a little younger, our social lives are in the toilet outside of Facebook. I mean, when I was growing up, I had 100 friends easy. I could make one phone call and 100 people would show up within a few hours. Nowadays, I could call 100 people and I couldn't get one person to show up at my house, even with you know, whatever the greatest quality booze on tap. You know, they would never show up. And this is not because it's me. I mean, these people would apologize profusely and oh, we'll make it next time, I swear. And then they'll have a party, no one shows up, and it's just, social media has robbed us a lot of our sense of what real socializing is like. I mean, Waylon and I are good friends, right? And Waylon and I think if we lived next door to each other, we'd probably never be in our own homes alone. Like, we'd be over each other's house every other day, like having a beer and just bullshitting and hanging. But he lives like 1,000 miles away from me, so that's not going to happen. And social media has made it so that we could have, like, there could be a guy 3 houses down from me who's just like him, but I'll never know because we don't get out and about. Instead, we engage in these petty little dramas online and all these little power struggles and posturing, and it's a waste of time. And I really feel bad about that because there's not much one person can do. You know, I could log off and then lose all my social clout and lose all my potential business doing this stuff, you know, online. But this is just a natural. This is how it is. This is how, and it is sad. Smile, play. It is really sad, and it's not just me. It's half the world. Okay, there's a lot of people out there that don't have this experience. There's a lot of you that have a rich social life and social media, and you guys are doing it right. But it doesn't always work. And I'm a bit of an introvert. You know that. I'm an extroverted introvert. When you get me, you know, I talk, but I don't like to be gotten. I like to be like an octopus waiting in my cave, waiting for food to go by. It's just how I am. And I'm not an introvert because I'm afraid or because I don't want to interact with people I like. It's just that most people I don't like, or, you know, I immediately don't get along with them because they're just too normal, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think I've said this a time or two, but there are times when you and I, you know, like we've never had a problem with each other or anything like that. You know, it's never came to words or anything like that. But there are certain things that you and I are not alike on, and we don't necessarily agree on. But
oh yeah, there's times that my eyes glaze over, and there's times your eyes glaze over when we're talking. It happens.
At the same time, you know, the point behind that is that, you know, what we do is we find a commonality that we have, and that's our friendship, and that's, you know, And that's the basis of it. Okay, so you got a problem with somebody out there in social media or whatever. I'm not saying be their friend and, just let it go. What I'm saying is, approach it differently, look at it this way. All that energy all that emotional energy, mental energy, psychic energy that you're pouring into this reaction, whether you're giving power away or not, the truth of the matter is if you want to make a point, and then don't, after you've made your point, no more, don't continue with it, just let it go. Let your words be said, let them be few, but let them be true.
I think that's really powerful too, because you'll always notice, people, here's another thing that's related to that. There's a lot of people, pardon me, I'm drinking soda, I might burp a few times. There's a lot of people out there in the community that equate power with popularity, power with the ability to manipulate others, power with being in an alpha position in society. And that's not how it really works, especially in magic. Magic doesn't give a fuck. It will give you those positions if you're worthy of them. It will allow an alpha to rise higher than they would otherwise. It can certainly help you to learn to be more in control. It can give you those things. But a lot of people don't realize is that, and it's just like with anything like in politics or any other kind of social engagement, the witty people are very often not the ones who are really in control. They're just witty and they convince a lot of people to follow them. But a lot of the times, people who have authority, they don't fight. People who are in charge, the big dog doesn't bark as loud as the small dog, okay? The big dog goes, whoo, and that's it. And all the other dogs shut the fuck up. And that's how it is. And when you have people that are constantly yipping and barking and squabbling, these are the betas and the tertiary people that don't really have the leadership quality that they're trying to portray. Like with my dog, I don't yell at my dog. I stand up tall, I put my chest out, I expose my neck and go for it, motherfucker, do what I want or else. And I never, ever have to threaten, harm, or yell at my dog. My dog just goes, uh-huh. And it's how people are too. A lot of people, they respond and they think that they see a person who is constantly beating their chest and saying how awesome they are and all this other stuff. And maybe they've got other things going for them, and they've got fans, real fans that love them and care about them. And what they need to do is to rise above. And we keep saying this, rise above these people that are trying to, prove that they have power. Rise above these people. If you're the crab that's halfway out of the of the bucket already, and someone's pulling on you, instead of like turning around and fighting them, let them, just kick them off and keep going, and hopefully if I ever get targeted, or if you ever get targeted with a coordinated, social media gauntlet, we'll be smart enough to just be like, don't respond to it. Just do what you do, put out your correction and move on. I mean, look at what the successful professionals do. And I mean, that's what we're aiming for in Dark Sorcery. And I know that's what you and I are aiming for privately, is to be professional about this, to build our professional, face in all of this.
Yeah, and doesn't have room for all the emotional bullshit.
There isn't, and you look at who are the successful ones. Does Coetting respond every time someone mocks him, even when it's a big name? No. And in fact, the big names, do they mock each other hardly at all? When was the last time you saw anybody that's a big name really mock one another? I mean, you could have fallouts. You and I are both aware of fallouts between some of these big names. They won't work with each other really anymore, but you'll never hear about why unless you're in their private little forums and there's rumors that trickle out, but they'll never come at each other. They're too professional for that. So when you have people in this community that are trying to act like they're in charge and be in charge, this is what they should be doing. Instead of, when someone who's below you is making fun of you, who gives a shit? They're below you. Like, why do you care? Like, people come to me and said, oh, such and so said something about you. They made fun of me because I'm a follower of Thorne or something like that. And I'm like, well, good. That's freaking awesome. That's good for me, because that means they've heard of me and I've never fucking heard of them. So what do I fucking care?
It's because these professionals, it's because they have too much to do to worry about all that, because that's just a part of the order of it. That's part and parcel, man. It comes with the whole package. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your haters and your dissidents and all that other stuff. That's just a part of it. You gotta roll with the punches, so to speak. That's why you never hear them. I mean, they don't whine, they don't cry, they don't bitch about it. They just, It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
not for nothing, if you're successful, you're lucky you get 10% haters anyway. You know, if you're doing it right, you're not going to have a lot of haters. You like, I have videos where I've got 1 or 2 downvotes out of like 20 or 30 upvotes. I just laugh at those because that's just like, thank you for your input. I'll try to remember that you don't like me next time we do. You know? Like, whatever, you know, who cares? You know, if you're doing the right thing, if you're doing what's right, if you're behaving with nobility, to borrow the Order of Nine Angles, you know, style of you know, nobility, if you're acting with nobility and you're not being a mundane person who's just like, you know, just crawling your way to try. If you're acting with nobility, you're not going to have these problems as much anyway, because you're just going to, it's always going to be below you. You're just going to keep moving and keep trying. And if some point it does bog me down, then I hope I remember these words and eat my hat. I don't really have a hat, but you know, I'll find one.
I'll bring the ketchup.
Bring the ketchup. Yeah.
Bring in the ketchup.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, we as occultists, especially black occultists, all right, this is a big thing I wanted to get to. You know, we live in glass houses, right? We are not, even in the magical community, okay, in all that there is, the New Age and the Hermetics and all these different groups, they generally, with exceptions, do not look upon us with a lot of, you know, pride or respect. There's exceptions in our group because there's some people who bleed over between the two, and there's definitely some, you know, the bigger names and such who won't ever really be thought of as bad. They're great authors, they're great this, they're great that. So, but as a community, the left-hand path, black magic, occultism, we are the black sheep of the magical community, and we live in glass houses. Okay, that means we each have a very easy, we're an easy target. Okay, if I don't like you, let's say I don't like you today, Waylon, and I want to bring grief to you. Well, I'm going to go to some website, some group where I know that there's a bunch of normal people who like to make fun of people like us, and I'm just going to share your videos and make fun of you, and I'm going to get all these trolls to come and give you hell, and it's going to be easy for me because you and I are vulnerable targets as occultists. It's just how we are. So how do we fix that? And you and I both agree it's really simple. We have to act better. We have to be better, and we have to be respectable.
Yeah, and don't feed it. Don't feed the troll.
Don't feed the trolls, and don't be a troll. You know, listen, I'm telling you guys who are watching this, you may not see this because a lot of you guys, I mean, in the left-hand path, there's 2 big extremes. You have the really down-to-earth, you know, people who are just down-to-earth, tolerant, interesting, well-educated, intelligent, wise people who keep their nose in their books and their practices, and they're just ascending. They're just doing what they do. This is their way of life, and they're beautiful, strong people, and I really appreciate them. And then you have the lunatics that are like, I almost broke my rule there where I was going to talk about anybody in the group. You know, they have these people who are bragging about their exploits with the goetics and things like that, or just making a fool of themselves and causing all of this drama for themselves. And they make us look so freaking stupid and I mean, they make it look like I do right now. They make us look like boneheads, like lunatics and conspiracy theorists. And we're not like that. There's a lot of us like you and me and all the people we have on our shows, you know, and others that are just so superior and so intelligent and know what they're doing better than us even. I'm very arrogant, and there's people I go, wow, that's a great point. I wish I could produce a video that good or say something that wise. And where are these people? You know, they're doing their thing. They're making us look better, and then you have these idiots making us look bad.
I want to throw out something there real fast if I can. All right, so I'll play devil's advocate for just a minute here. So there are some people who have been put down their whole life and all this, that, and the other. And of course, on social media, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to be that person that's going to react because, you know, of whatever, you know, for whatever was against them, because they've just awakened to a path that says self-empowerment. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they're working on the self-empowerment. And some of it is the fact that you have to stand up for your fucking self and don't let people run you the fuck over. I totally, absolutely fucking agree with that. Yep. I would never try to tell somebody to
be a doormat.
Oh, you need to just let it go. Just turn the other cheek. Fuck that. Sometimes you need to tell a motherfucker how it is, but then you need to let it fucking go after.
And then let it go. Right. You need to give them that one good hit and show that you're better than them. Because how many times like, look at the arguments that happen on our Facebook pages and stuff. You'll get people start arguing, right? And it'll almost always start off with one person's right and one's wrong, or they're both wrong, or they're both right for different reasons. And they'll start talking to each other, and they'll start talking. Now, this can go one of two ways. You can have a rational discourse and both learn something, or you can start name calling and turn ugly. And on social media, because what you say lingers there, and you can reread it and read into it as many times as you need to get pissed off at somebody, you have a situation where people will go back and forth, and then they'll start repeating their points over and over again. Well, I said this already. And then they'll start pointing out what the other person said, and you have to quote each other and all this other shit. And it gets ugly faster and faster and faster and faster. And someone who's in charge, like, this is why I like being admin of Dark Sorcery. I usually try to let people go unless they're really making it personal. Like, if I feel like they're trying to come at me or joust with me or something, you can disagree with me, but don't try to make it personal or say, I don't know what I'm talking about or something like that. Keep it impersonal and disagree if you want. But then you'll have some people who, like, they'll do that. So I like being admin because I'll say what I think, and then I'll block the shit out of them. They won't be able to post a reply, and I go, I win. I won the online game. I didn't, but I get to play that game, and they lose. And do I get made fun of for it? No. This is how social media works, and it's so irritating. Guys, if you're having arguments with people, say your piece, drop your payload, and unless you have to clarify or rectify, try to let it go, one or two responses, and just let it go. I'm talking about with trolls. I'm not talking about a legitimate conversation or a disagreement where you're just trying to talk. I'm saying once it turns ugly, turn that shit off, and if you're an admin, block, mute, quiet, silence, delete, whatever. If you're not, contact an admin, especially Dark Sorcerer. If someone's giving you personal grief, and we're very open with, censorship. We don't like to censor, critical opinions necessarily or anything like that, so long as there's respect involved. So if you're having a problem, if someone's coming at you personally, then notify one of us right away. Send us a private message and say, this person is, going above and beyond just disagreeing with me. They're hurting me. They're threatening me, and if we see something, of course, we want to keep the community clean, right? I mean, we don't want to have this be a fucking, daycare. That's not our choice either.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to keep the balance there. It's just all there is to it. You've got to be able to spot what's important and worth your time and your attention to confront. And that's part of being wise, is knowing the difference, because if it's just as simple as just being like, well, that's just a troll or that's just a bottom feeder, it's easy to just not even comment. Because like a few of my videos, I've had viewers come on there and, like I had this one person was sitting there trying to tell me that when I get ready, they're more than willing to show me the truth. Going, cool. Removed.
I try not to remove too many comments. If someone makes it too personal, I will, just because I like to keep the comments clean and on topic. But obviously, if I ever get big enough where I have thousands and thousands of subs and I get hundreds of comments at a time, I'm not going to be able to do that. But
well,
generally speaking,
that is different. It's because I have a lot of people that when they and I know a lot of really, really, really good people that when they see an injustice, they're the first ones to jump on there and say, hey, you need to leave so-and-so alone, or hey, this ain't the place for that. They do it in tasteful ways.
Sometimes it's good, and it can really disrupt your community when people are arguing about you.
I don't remove comments of people who disagree with me. Sweet, man. I mean, nobody's going to agree, first off. Second off, I would rather somebody who had their own mind speak their mind.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, everybody on board the Jolly Rogers or something, we're all pirates pillaging and plundering.
Right. I mean, is this a religion, or are we trying to expand people's consciousness with dark magic? I think that's the latter is what we're trying to do. I've said many times that obviously, so long as it's respectful, don't hurt my feelings just because you disagree with me, or don't try to. But if we are, my goal is to get you to think. And if you watch my videos and you're a skeptic, right, and you become more of a skeptic after watching my videos, it doesn't bother me. I have a skeptical mind as well as doing magic. I have a partially skeptical mind. I always look at a situation and go, I know what caused that. Let me just, because you want to make sure, you want to know that you're doing things right. You don't want to fall for your own, bullshit. And so when skeptics don't agree or don't believe in what I'm doing, I don't care. And by the same token, if I convince somebody, sometimes one of the worst things will happen. Someone will see my stuff, like what I do, and I'll get just my inbox will fill up with, can you help me do this? Can you teach me this? Can you do this and that? Now, some people I don't mind. I have a relationship with some of these people. Some of these are like my first friends on Facebook, and I will help them in whatever way I can. But some of these people, they're literally they're clinging onto your coattails, trying to get you to do this and that for them. And that's not healthy either. I want people to absorb what I have as a buffet. And if you like what you see, you take what is good for you and you leave the rest, and no harm, no foul. I'm an ideologue about maybe my belief in being a free person, as being a Luciferian liberated person. And I want that for everybody. But that's if you're going to be an ideologue, that's a pretty healthy one to have, because you're not going to force anybody to agree with you. You're just going to say, do what you want within the context of don't hurt people unfairly. You know what I mean? And we live in a community on Facebook where, again, another thing to remember is a lot of these people wouldn't be doing these things if they were face to face with one another, whether they're big and strong and tough, or just knowing that someone could grab a lock of their hair and do some shit with it. People wouldn't be doing this stuff in person, and they generally don't. And, that's something to be said too. I was always raised in this with the belief that whether someone knows more than you or not, or knows less than you don't, everyone's subjective experience of magic is valid to a great extent. Even these people who are saying these crazy off the wall things like they're, masters of this and that. I just go, if that's your experience, go have fun with it. That's great. Because that's how this works. I mean, that's the point.
Social media is so it's a great place to get to make friends that you normally wouldn't. Like you were talking about, somebody living 3 doors down, which you'll never know, because of your experience, or because of life or whatever. It's like where I live. Holy crap, smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt. Somebody that I can find in my area, it's not necessarily that I would be finding the beginner or the ignorant, but I would be finding the beginner or the ignorant. And there's nothing wrong with either until you run into this concept where the little bit that they do know, they think they've got the keys to the entire magical universe, and that they're a master guru. That's what you get where I live. So, it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I'd rather make my friends elsewhere.
And don't forget, there's an old saying, I think it's actually in the Bible, it's a man can't be a prophet in his own village. So, you kind of have to, there's that too. With social media, makes it a lot easier for us to do what we do. When I walk around town, people look at me funny. My wife gets it. My son gets it. Some of my old friends get it. And that's cool. But most of the people I interact with every day don't. Even in a big city or a large town like I live in, out of all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who might practice pagan or alternative religions or paths like we do, there might not be any that are into the path that you and I are on, that's, or even close. I mean, that would look at us like, oh, you're going to, the threefold law is going to come kick you in the ass. You don't even understand what I do. So let's not even have this conversation. But there's a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of that. And so where can black occultists and left-hand path people turn to? We had actually somebody in Dark Sorcery asked, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, something along the lines of, what was it? Something about darkness or something like that. And, a lot of people don't realize that, like, dark sorcery or black magic, it's not because it's evil. Okay. It has nothing to do with evil per se. It's more tolerant of the concept of evil, I think, because most people are liberated in this kind of setting. But the darkness that we're talking about, and this evil, this blackness that we're talking about, not evil, is the hidden, and it's the part of you that most people don't want to look into. It's kind of like in the movie Dune, where he says that the Bene Gesserits, he's going to look into a place where they dare not look. Well, this is what the left-hand path does. This is what dark magic does. You look into that part of the human psyche and experience that all these other people are afraid to look into. That doesn't necessarily mean you're evil, bad, or I think this person who posted this was trying to get a gotcha on us. But it's ridiculous because you and I, like, let's just take me and you, okay? I consider you and I fairly powerful sorcerers. We know what we're talking about. And if we had to, our magic protects us or could fuck up people that we don't like. It would be pretty effective. And there's people who are way better at it. They just have a lot more experience fucking people up. And my prior history as a bouncer and as a not so nice person, I have a history of doing things like that to people. You wouldn't tell now because I've had a complete change in my outlook in the world. But we've all come from this place. And the reason why I stopped being this destructive person, and you and I were having this conversation earlier, was because we did dance with the devil enough times that we realized how silly this was. That this expression of darkness that we thought was just an emo, edgy way to look cool and feel cool. And I still kept the clothes, but I don't have the attitude. I'm like a Jedi now, okay? Let me be honest with you guys for a second. I keep the trappings of darkness, but my inner spirit is like a neutral Jedi. If you ever got to know me personally, okay, that's how I roll. I am more interested in the grandeur of the energy of the universe and learning to become part of that maelstrom. As I said in my post the other day about you are a masterwork of divinity. I want you to be a masterwork of your own divinity, not some evil, fake, antithesis of what you think good is. That's ridiculous. And this causes a lot of drama in the community because we attract people part of left-hand path to this edgy and dark. And like I said, I'll still keep the trappings because I think they're cool, and I'll still talk that way sometimes because they get clicks and stuff, and it's fun. It's a fun character to play. But let's be honest with each other. We're not evil people trying to hurt anybody. We're trying to liberate mankind. And you always say this: steal the fire and bring it back to the people. Or as you said, it's the fire's already stolen, but bring that fire back and from the gods and give it to the people again. I mean, I think that's a big piece of it. Would you agree that that's a lot of why we have so many toxic people in the left-hand path community?
I don't know if that's exactly why we have so many toxic people. I think that where toxicity comes from in general is it's kind of like cast off. Like if you're trying to smelt iron, how you have slag that cast off.
Mm-hmm.
I think the toxicity comes from, it is a form of the slag of the soul being purified and, made into a perfected form, the philosopher's gold, whatever you want to call it. I myself, I like to think of myself, I am the light within the darkness. And by that, what I mean is that inside me, at my very core, is this brilliant star. And, as they all say, the brightest light casts the longest shadow. And I clothe myself in darkness because, there's no other way about it. There's a time when you need the aloofness, and not in society's eyes. It's not an edgy, cool thing. That's not what I'm talking about. There are times when I want to escape the social setting of things, and spend a week or two of doing nothing but working on my own consciousness, and then come back. And I find that I have to balance instead of dividing myself like that all the time. I need to work making it one all the time, constantly, being that conscious being while in the social setting, things of that nature. And it's part of an eternal balance that, I'm constantly working on. But the toxicity, getting back to that, that's just caused from doing the work. That's caused from, growing and becoming, so forth and so on. What's really sad is that that toxicity. I don't know if anybody understands this next part I'm about to be talking about, but when you talk about the poison path, when you talk about venom versus the ambrosia of life. What happens is that venom has a choice. It can do one of two things. It will either kill you, or you will become immune to it, and you will become stronger because of it, and that's how it becomes a sweet ambrosia. But this is all done in the context of temperance,
Mm-hmm.
Finding a harmonic balance that works for you individually. And that's, you know, that's everything from what you take into your mind to what you take into your belief system. And what you put in your mind and what you put in your belief system are two different things. Always keep that in mind.
Yep.
And when you're working through this, you got to understand it's causing an alchemical change, you know, like sulfur, salt, and mercury, the three main crimes. The thing is that what arises and comes out of us is venom, is poison. Here's the thing, you know, do you cast it away, or are you poisoning somebody else's path, somebody else's water, somebody else's power, you know? And that's the key. And the sad thing is that, like I was saying about the path of poison, the very first one, it can either kill you. What happens is you have so many who will fail, who will fall. You can't. Some people, that's their lot in life. They are going to fall. They're going to fail. There's no saving. They can't save themselves. Nobody else can save them for whatever reason underneath the sun. Whether because they don't want to, whether they can't get over something, can't get past something. Whatever the reason or medium that's used, they're not going to make it. Not everybody is going to ascend. And you have to have a little bit of consciousness to you to understand and recognize that when you see it in others, so that you don't fall victim. Because a dying person will drown you trying to save themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, that it's just, it happens. You ever tried to save a drowning person?
I've tried to drown people. I've never tried to.
I've been drowned twice in my life. It's not fun, but I'll tell you this though. As a lifeguard, I learned real quickly. You almost got to let them drown themselves out before you can actually rescue them.
I've heard that, actually. I knew somebody in the, I don't know if it was the Coast Guard or was in the military, that said sometimes that happens. You got to give them space, let them go down, and then you grab them, and that's how you rescue them, because they're so busy flailing and hitting on you. You can't do anything. I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to use that exact same method when dealing with people in general, because, you know, how many times does it take being bit or hurt by a person before you realize that they're just no good whatsoever? No matter how sparkling their personality, no matter how friendly. There are some people, man, they'll just drag you down no matter what, you know. And those are the kind of people, you know, you've just got to be able to spot it. You got to recognize it. You got to notice it. You just got to cut it and let it go.
Yeah, I'm seeing we're getting some good comments here. One of the ones I want to touch on for a second is Smiley Plays said a couple things that kind of sparked some things in my mind. 2 or 3 things. As someone who works in a kind of Zen current a little bit with my black, you know, occultism, is this tendency of people who are not aware of how this current works. People will try to stifle or remove from themselves these dark things that they don't like. So in other words, let's say you do have a reactionary personality. Okay. Let's say people do piss you right the fuck off. And my wife, when I were actually watching the movie, what the hell is it with, it's the movie with Adam Sandler. He's mad all the time. I can't think of it. Anger Management. And there's such a thing as implosive anger and explosive anger. And I'm not trying to say a movie is a good, you know, source of psychological knowledge, but they're right. There is a kind of activity where you can deny what needs to be expressed and not learn from it. You know, there's 2 ways you can hurt yourself. You can either express this crap and fight people all the time, or you can internalize it and fight yourself and try to deny it. You have all these pent up people who won't look at pornography or won't masturbate or won't have sex or won't ever touch drugs or anything. They're so pent up in life that it causes them to have problems, instead of recognizing, okay, I have a need or a desire that is either not being fulfilled or it's overactive. How can I balance this? You know, you need to balance these energies in yourself through all kinds of means. Nobody's perfect. You know, you and I have been doing these things for a long time, and you and I have our quirks. I have my arrogance. You know, there's times where I get really full of myself and I go, look how powerful I am. I'm in control. And then there's times where I go, man, I don't feel that. That's an imbalance.
And there's times when I'm showing too much humility and not enough strength of character.
And it makes you get temperamental, or it makes you get, you know, you'll feel like you're out of control, or you'll try to grab control really hard and not realize you're going to break the thing you're grabbing. This is normal. Okay. So The first thing you have to do to deal with these things is accept them. You have to go, this is a normal part of being a human being. And if I don't like these things about myself, the quickest way to make them worse is to continue not liking them. This is the trick. You need to learn to accept it, and then learn to, kind of like when a child's upset, right? There's 3 ways you can handle it. Sometimes you have to be forceful and aggressive and say, shut the hell up and sit down or I'm going to ground you. And sometimes you have to let them cry it out in their room. And sometimes you have to just talk to them and reassure them it's going to be okay. So when someone has like deep held anxiety, they're upset all the time, people are picking on them, sometimes they have to be reassured, you're right. These people shouldn't have said these things about you. You're 100% in the right, and you need to move on now. And instead of saying you're an idiot for retaliating, you need to learn how to approach them or approach yourself. So when you're saying you have an issue where you are, maybe you have aggression, instead of trying to stifle your aggression, you need to find ways, and I hate to sound like a stupid after school special, you need to find ways to channel it and accept it. Don't stop demonizing it. I mean, as a left-hand path black occultist, the word demonization has a special meaning because a lot of us know that these beings were gods or heavenly beings, high beings, divine beings that have been demonized by our culture in some way. So it's absurd to demonize what is actually very good and useful about yourself, because I found that when people begin to accept themselves for who they are and not try to stifle their darkness or try to act like they're good all the time, the interesting thing that happens is you get balanced and you start just being someone that people will respect as a matter of course, and you will respect people more as a matter of that as well, because you're going to start seeing in other people these same characteristics. You're going to say, well, I am also an asshole, so therefore this person's an asshole. I don't have to hate them. That doesn't mean you have to hug them. Doesn't mean you have to like them. I don't like people as a general rule, but I don't think people need to be destroyed as a general rule either. I think live and let live and leave them alone. And this is where people can go with these things and not hate on themselves. And he also mentioned temperance is coming up as a card for him a lot lately. And that's a very important thing to speak of, because that's what I'm talking about in a way too. But what is temperance? Temperance is you have to be tested. You have to be forged, and then you have to be heat treated. You have to be quenched. And then temperance is the process that actually takes some of the tension out of the metal. I don't know if you guys know anything about blacksmithing, which I know very little, but I like swords a lot, so I learn about it. When you're making a knife or a sword, you have to, of course, make the shape. Then you have to harden it, which means you have to heat it up to a point where it's no longer magnetic for most metals. Then you have to quench it so that it gets locked. All the crystals in there gets locked in that really strong, springy, almost glass-like form. And then you have to put it in an oven for a certain amount of time. Most kinds of steel, not all. Some will just air quench like that. And let them temper. And what this does is it relaxes the blade so that it can flex instead of break every time it encounters an obstacle. Someone who is really pent up and has a lot of discipline and control, they're not very tempered, and they can be broken very easily just by finding that harmonic that'll crack them. Someone who is really just explosive and angry all the time, well, they're already broken and you can just do what you want with them. They're easy prey. So a strong blade will bend and flex. They'll act angry a little bit, but they'll vent it out. The highest Zen masters, they still get mad. They just don't get, I shouldn't say that. They will experience anger, but they don't become angry. So in other words, the anger goes through them and is released, and they don't hold on to it, and they're fine. I'll get mad and I'll curse. Like the person cuts me off, I'm like, fuck, I want to kill this motherfucker. And then 3 seconds later, I'm like, doop, 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 because I'm over it already. I don't give a shit. It's done. And I don't attach myself to that. And you can get very good at that to the point where your moment of anger is that long and it's over and it's gone. I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I don't even know if I care to. I'm actually happy with how I am. And that's a big secret too. Be happy with who you are, the flaws and the not flaws. Be the Persian rug with the flaw on it so that it's not so perfect that it stops existing. I think that's Persian.
You're not trying to deny your feelings. You're not trying to deny your thoughts, your opinions. Hell, you're not even trying to deny yourself. That's why I said earlier about playing the devil's advocate. I mean, there's a place and a time for everything, and that is one of them. I don't think that we were put here to lord over one another, anything like that. I think the only lording should be done over is by yourself to yourself. The greatest form of control is self-control. Mm-hmm. The greatest master is the master who is the master of self.
You know, my dad used to, was it my dad or was somebody that was in my family, used to say that the best horse riders don't micromanage the horse. You know, they let the horse go where it wants, and they just go to the left a little bit now, and then they leave it alone. And life is like that. Okay. And you being in control of your emotions, being the lord of yourself, for example, you know, what does a really powerful king do? They don't micromanage the kingdom. They just go, I want to build a highway. Waylon, go build the highway, you know, and that's it. And then they go play golf. Right. This is what a real, someone who's really in control. What's that?
At Mar-a-Lago.
Lago. And they relax. They don't get worked up about, is my will going to happen? They don't babysit themselves. Okay. Someone who is really a master of themselves doesn't have to do that. They're okay with who they are. Like, you know, when I'm feeling anxiety about things, which I do still, you know, I mean, I'm not perfect by any stretch, obviously. Especially in the next couple of months, you know, I start my day job again. I'm gonna have to put some of this stuff on hold a little bit. I'll be lucky if I get to do a stream every week from like April till June. So I might lose some of my subscribers or something. I'm nervous about that, and it makes me unhappy. But then I have to realize that I'm going through a situation for a reason. It's a necessary part of my growth. And that if I really want to change it, all I have to do is ask Belial to come along and reshuffle the cards for me and hold on really fucking tight. And hopefully it'll work out to my advantage. But if I'm not willing to do that, then I shouldn't be upset about it, because I'm exactly where I want and need to be. So, you know, I think it's one of those things that I think we should just briefly now, you know, now that we've talked about the community and like the psychological aspect of a lot of this, is there any, you know, because I just touched on a little bit, is there any magical solutions to any of this? And I'm not saying for the community, because I don't feel like it's my job to cast spells on the community and make them peaceful, because I'm not even sure. That's a lot of people you have to influence. What about for yourself? Is there any shadow work or self magic you should be doing to help temper yourself or make yourself better? I would say meditation is a big thing, you know, like I could go into it, but I'm going to let you start, and hopefully I'll come up with something interesting to add to it.
On the magical front of that, the black flame is the blacksmith's fire. Okay. Now the human soul itself is the metal. I like to use a form of cane, tubal cane, blacksmith, grave forger. It was either tubal or jubal cane. I'm fairly certain it's tubal cane. That particular aspect taught me how to handle the process that I was going through. So, like, as far as like, you know, how you work with a lot of like goetic spirits and things. Well, I've worked with a myriad of spirits, and my favorite of all is Cain the blacksmith, because Cain is blacksmith. Man, he teaches you how to survive the smelting process, how to survive the casting process, you know, all of it throughout the whole thing. Not only that, but he's also very important to teach you not just how to be a weapon, but how to be armored as well. You know, how to protect so that the weapon is not necessary. You know, that's some good sound magical advice I could give to anybody out there actually interested in, you know, approaching it via a deity or a deific mask.
You know, that brings up something that I just have to say real quick. And it's kind of on and off the topic. It's something my wife and I were talking about in the car the other day, and I forgot. I said, remember this. I want to say this for a live stream or something. And it goes back to what we were talking about in one of those baneful magic conversations we had, where you went through every different piece of clothing and the significance you can have in protection. And I said, a lot of people dress to, it's kind of like a social camouflage. It's a way for them to hide in society and to fit in. But then the rest of us, our clothing is a form of armor or a warning signal that we will either fuck you up or are invulnerable to your bullshit. So that's kind of something, because you're talking about putting all this armor on, you know, it applies to clothing, but it also applies to your actions in the community. You can have a social camouflage, and this is the average person who doesn't start shit, don't talk shit, don't get involved in shit. Then you have people who just put off this air of like, no, you're not going to hurt me, that's your armor. And then you got the people who people are afraid to say anything about because they're afraid of what will happen to them, or both. And so you got to pick and choose how you want to be. And you can be a very powerful person and be camouflaged. You can be a very powerful person and be armored. And you can be a very powerful person and be like that tree frog with all the bright colors that every animal knows if they touch it, they're going to die. So you gotta pick your poison. You got to pick your weapon and go with that. And magically speaking, you know, for me, I think that a strong offense is a good defense, and a good defense is a strong offense. And the spirits that I work with, you know, some of them like Malphus I'm public about, then I have ones I don't talk about, but the ones that I have that I work with pretty much, you know, I'm following my true will. I'm following my true intention. You and I've talked about this, and that's why I've had success, is because I'm not trying to hide behind something or change something that's not me. And the spirits want what I'm doing to succeed to at least where it's succeeded so far, if not way beyond this. And it's been pretty clear that, like, you know, people who are troublemakers disappear out of my sphere pretty quickly. They're not part of what I do. They don't come on our live streams. They leave our sphere really quickly once they're exposed. And then that's that. And this is because I try to keep a low drama sphere around me that is well protected and guarded. And if people don't like me, they can keep at the edge of that sphere and try to sling their little bullshit at me, and I don't care. It doesn't affect me. So magically speaking, you can do that. There's definitely spirits you can work with. You have Dantalion. You have obviously King Paimon is good at making people like you and stuff like that. You have Malphus. You have all these spirits. Almost every one of those spirits, if they create strong walls and towers, there's your protection right there. If they build good structures, that's your support base. You know, these are ways to interpret what the Goetic, you know, words are. It's when they're saying, it doesn't just mean building houses and walls, although that may be what they meant. It's not what it means now. It actually means forms of defenses and things like that. But you can also build yourself up and just be so, you know, exude authority or exude kindness or exude whatever it is that nobody wants to bother you. You know, if you're not an enemy to anybody, why should anybody pick on you? And that's, you know, that's a magical thing, even though it may not sound like it. And I don't know if I cut you off, if you had any other ideas, by the way. You seemed like you were kind of finished. I realized I just started going into my thing. Did you have more you want to say before I finish off with what I was saying about that?
That's funny you say that, that last part, that whole thing about, you know, the way you put yourself out there, and, you know, whether or not you're taken as an offensive target to take on, that has a lot to do with it, you know. Certainly, you don't sit back like you're a pushover. But certainly, I mean, you know, you have to have a strong sense of self and all this, that, and the other. But at the same time, who are you trying to come across as? The badass who ain't gonna take no shit from nobody? You know, not even a compliment or a comment that you didn't understand or took the right way because you're so caught up in your own mentality that you overlooked it or misunderstood. You know.
Yeah.
You know, so that's awesome, man. I like you pointed that out.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that, you know, like, again, going back to when I was younger and stuff and doing bouncing work and stuff, you know, what people don't realize is I'm not as nice a guy as I act. I'm really not. I mean, I am, but I'm not. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm very calm and I'm very kind to people who give me respect, and people I like, I want to, one way or the other, I like to lift them up with me and bring them with me, because I'm like, in a way, I emulate the demons that I work with, the daemons and the gods. Is I want strong allies and friends. I don't want weaklings who just do what I tell them. I want people who are powerful, who respect me and will work with me. And if someone does attack me, I don't even have to say protect me. They're already going, let's help this out. Let's fix this. But the only other thing I would say, magically speaking, is you need to, you know, we could talk about in terms of chakras. You know, you need to balance all of your energy centers, whether you use chakras or if you've removed them as this new quirky thing is that they talk about, which I don't know. I've looked into it and I think it just sounds kind of strange, but if that's your way, that's your way. You know, you can balance your energy centers. And when you do, one of the things you don't realize is, if we're talking about chakras, okay, you have like your three lower chakras are very much related to how you interact with people. If your root chakra is malfunctioning, if it's either over or under stimulated or energized, you're going to be concerned about survival all the time. And you're going to be worried about money, and you're going to be worried about all these little base things that matter. If your sacral is out of whack, you're going to have a hard time relating to one another and expressing yourself and having sexual things work for you. A lot of people think root is sexual. It's not. It's more like the sacral. If your solar plexus is off, you're not going to have the energy. Like right now, this time of year, I think Waylon and I solar plexus chakras are probably a little out of whack. We need to get out and about and re-energize that part of ourselves. If your heart chakra is out of whack, then you're not in touch with your emotions properly, and you will act out and you will lash out whether you're having good communication or not. You'll misread people and things like that. If your throat chakra is out of whack, you're not going to be able to talk right. You're going to stumble over your words. I have a form of aphantasia. When it comes on, I know that my throat chakra is a little doofy and I can't think of words as well as I normally do, and I start using the wrong words, and I sit there going, oh, what was their name, what was this, what was that? And your throat chakra is also a lot about making decisions. If that is off, that's also going to make you make mistakes when you're dealing with the community. If your throat chakra is off, if your third eye is off, you're not going to notice the subtle signs and symbols around you that might be guides to tell you what to do. And if your crown chakra is all fucked up, then you're not going to be receiving those messages in the first place. So you need to keep everything in balance, and they don't have to be powerful. They just have to be balanced, and you will start finding peace happening in your life a little bit more. When they're out of whack, that's when you start having, and remember, it doesn't mean that your life is going to be screwed up, like people are going to die around you. What it means is your experience, your outward, inward, ecosystem is going to be out of whack. And so my advice to people is practice meditation, try to get in control, practice breathing exercises that help calm you. When this crap happens and you're starting to feel like drama is starting to happen to you, magic is actually probably the last thing I would do. The first thing I would do is just turn off the damn computer. And with the exception of the fact that a lot of what I and Waylon do is centered around becoming popular on the internet to a degree, we have to keep it on. So what we have to do, if you're like in a leadership position like we are, then you can't just turn it off, but you do need to try your best to turn off. If someone's talking shit about you, block them and don't follow them. And if people start telling you what they're talking shit about you, tell them, please respectfully don't tell me what they're saying. And if someone's telling you don't trust this sorcerer, that sorcerer, which war, just say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to be friends with everybody. Consider me like Sweden. And if somebody comes against me, then I'm just going to, don't need you, go away. You want people to come to you and want to be around you, not afraid of what you might do if they don't like you. You want them to come to you and be like, this person's rising, I want to catch on to that and ride them, rather than, oh, I better do what this person says or else he might turn the community against me, or witch war, or come on, guys, grow up.
Hell yeah. Well said, man. Well said. You gotta elevate yourself above the bullshit. You just got to. But I like the way you put that, man. That's where it's at, man.
I think we beat this horse to death a little bit tonight. What do you think?
Fairly certain, but I want to say thank you to everybody that came out, hung out with us tonight. For all our viewers, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. If you're new here, please subscribe, please share. If you're not new here, please share and encourage people. I always say share responsibly. Don't share this in the middle of a Christian group, and get us in trouble, but share responsibly. And if you appreciate our comments, if you thought we were very diplomatic about it, please let us know. The more you interact with our content, the better, of course, we rank, and the more we get noticed. We are looking for you guys. We're not all powerful where we can just make this happen. It takes time. Magic takes time to work sometimes. And we're reaching out to you guys to help us to make this a thing. If you appreciate what we talk about, I'm not trying to sound like I kind of sound like PBS right now, don't I? Like this is like, I'm asking for donations.
You're not there yet. You're good.
But we enjoy this. This is not just because we're trying to be smartasses. We enjoy this. And, to at least a certain degree, we care about the community because it's our livelihood, or at least it could be, and it's our interest, and we appreciate all the resources that everybody else puts out in the community, even the people we don't always agree with, even the ones that are sources of drama. They put out valuable content that needs to be protected, because I'm sick and tired. I don't know about you guys, but I am sick and tired of being in a black sheep community where we have nothing but edgy little kids ruining things for everybody. Let's oh God, I sound like a new age guy now, don't I? Let's all peace and love.
let's shake up the pot a little bit. Let's see what's going on. We can expand and expound upon all things.
That's right. That's right. Guys, thank you for coming. Thank you so much. And we'll check you next time. I'm going to stop the broadcast. If you have any comments, we'll be looking for them. Thanks a lot.
Later.
Oh, yeah. You give it to us. Yeah, say it.
Until next time, peace, blessings, and power.
Peace, blessings, and power.